We're going to look at a snare doubling trick that I developed and I used in the track. It's this cool way of taking a simple mono central snare and making it a little bit wider with a little bit of movement. It's this cool trick, it's nice and subtle, but what I'll do is I'll show you it in the context of the track and then I'll solo the snare so you can focus in on what the snare actually sounds like by itself. So let's give it a listen. Yeah. So nice and punchy, stands out in the mix, but let's solo the snare group so we can focus in on exactly what the snare is doing. Now in particular, notice what is happening to the stereo image and the way it moves around this 3D space that all our sounds are living in. And the cool thing about this, although it sounds like it's actually moving through this stereo image, it's not, it's just a trick, it's an illusion that's been created from this snare doubling trick. So what exactly is going on? Well, basically we have the original snare, which will be this layer here that says normal. If we solo that, we can hear that one. And that is simply the normal snare, and it's panned very slightly to the left, or in fact, maybe halfway to the left from center. We can see it says 30L over there. And then this is the cool bit. What we've done is we've actually layered an exact copy of that that's twice as long. And there's an important warp mode setting we need to be careful of. So to do that, we'll get rid of that double copy so we can recreate it. We will copy the original down into this second layer below it. We will go into the warping bit in the bottom, make sure it's not being warped to start off. We need to make sure that it's just playing back right as normal. So we'll hit warp, and this is the cool trick. We'll hit warp, and then we'll hit this button here, the times by 2. This will make it exactly twice as long. So when we press it, notice as we click it, what happens to the length of the audio file as we click it. Perfect, we see it's exactly twice as long. If we can't remember which one of these two buttons to press, which to be honest, I can't always remember, just try each one of them until it either makes it twice as long or twice as short, and then do whichever one makes the most sense. In this case, we want it twice as long. And then I mentioned there was an important warp mode we need to watch out for, and that's the key thing that gives it this cool, grainy, biting quality. So if we solo this double channel and actually hear what happens at the moment, we can hear... Because the warp mode is on re-pitch, it's actually pitched it down. Whenever you stretch something out twice as long and you don't do any processing, it will have the effect of basically lowering the pitch of that particular sample. We don't want that. We want it to be the same pitch, but with this cool grainy texture quality. So we'll choose texture as the warp mode. And by default, the actual default settings are exactly what you want. So notice now it's got that grainy, nice texture. It's just got a bit of character, sounds absolutely great. And what's actually happening to keep the pitch exactly the same as it was before, what it's doing to stretch it out twice as long, it's cutting up the original sample into grains, which is determined by the grain size, and then it's moving those grains apart and then doing some form of crossfade between those different grains, which is what that flux parameter is. But I find by default, the default grain size of 65 and the flux of 25 sounds pretty good. So we'll leave it as that. And then notice how we panned the original snare maybe halfway over to the left. So remember, it goes from 0 to 50. So 30L is just over halfway to the left. And then we panned this doubled one, this twice as long sample, just very, very slightly to the right. We can see here it is 10R. And then together, so this is the one to the right, and then this is the one to the left. Together, they sound like one cohesive thing with this cool movement and width. It's up to us exactly how wide we want to make our snare using this effect, but I find that this is normally about as wide as you can make it, while it's still sounding like one individual snare. If we try to make it a little bit wider, let's say we put this normal snare, say 40 or let's say 45 to the left. Remember, it only goes as far as 50, so 45 is right on the far side of things. And maybe move the doubled one, say 20 to the right. Although it's wider now, to me it doesn't quite sound like one snare, whereas before, 30 to the left and 10 to the right still sounds like one snare. So that still sounds like one snare to me. And there you go, that is my snare doubling or snare widening trick.